Well, hello. My name is Jeff Heinrich, and it is a privilege to be speaking with you today here at the Fire Marshals and Conventions office. I'd like to thank everybody for coming and attending, and especially to our distinguished guests from the Insurance Services Office, the National Fire Protection Agency, all of our associated risk managers, the fire marshals that are in attendance. Thank you for being here. As your speaker today, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about myself, but today we're here to talk about community risk reduction. So again, my name is Jeff Heinrich. I am a captain at the Overland Park Fire Department. I've been in the fire service for 33 years. I started out, much like many of you, as a volunteer and worked my way through paramedic school, and I eventually became a career firefighter with the Overland Park Fire Department in 2002. I've been working with the fire department and an engagement group called the Speakers Bureau, and as part of that and in my master's program, I have developed this presentation to talk about community risk reduction. Just like many of you, I was drawn to the fire service because I like to break things and I wanted to help people, but I really wanted to explore upon this a little bit more because it really is the focus of community risk reduction and why many of us are here today and why we are involved in the fire service. So, as you can see, I am also a special needs dad. This is my son Braxton, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I wanted to expand a little bit on why we are all here today. So, for those of you who don't know this gentleman, this is Mark Bezos. He's the brother of Jeff Bezos, and he's the founder of Amazon. Maybe you've heard of them, but Mark is also an accomplished executive, and why don't you just watch this story.
Back in New York, I am the head of development for a nonprofit called Robin Hood. When I'm not fighting poverty, I'm fighting fires as the assistant captain of a volunteer fire company. Now, in our town, where the volunteers supplement a highly skilled career staff, you have to get to the fire scene pretty early to get in on any action. I remember my first fire. I was the second volunteer on the scene, so there was a pretty good chance I was going to get in. But still, it was a real foot race against the other volunteers to get to the captain in charge to find out what our assignments would be. When I found the captain, he was having a very engaging conversation with the homeowner, who was surely having one of the worst days of her life. Here it was, the middle of the night. She was standing outside in the pouring rain, under an umbrella, in her pajamas, barefoot, while her house was in flames. The other volunteer who had arrived just before me, let's call him Lex Luthor, got to the captain first and was asked to go inside and save the homeowner's dog. The dog! Oh, I was stunned with jealousy. Here was some lawyer or money manager who for the rest of his life gets to tell people that he went into a burning building to save a living creature. Just because he beat me by 5 seconds. Well, I was next. The captain waved me over, said, "Bezos, I need you to go into the house. I need you to go upstairs, past the fire, and I need you to get this woman a pair of shoes." I swear. So, not exactly what I was hoping for, but off I went. Up the stairs, down the hall, past the real firefighters who were pretty much done putting out the fire at this point, into the master bedroom to get a pair of shoes. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm no hero. I carried my payload back downstairs where I met my nemesis and the precious dog by the front door. We took our treasures outside to the homeowner where, not surprisingly, his received much more attention than did mine. A few weeks later, the department received a letter from the homeowner thanking us for the valiant effort displayed in saving her home. The act of kindness she noted above all others, someone had even gotten her a pair of shoes. You know, in both my vocation at Robin Hood and my avocation as a volunteer firefighter, I have witnessed to acts of generosity and kindness on a monumental scale. but I'm also witness to acts of grace and courage on an individual basis. And you know what I've learned? They all matter. So as I look around this room at people who either have achieved or are on their way to achieving remarkable levels of success, I would offer this reminder: don't wait. Don't wait until you make your first million to make a difference in somebody's life. If you have something to give it now. Serve food at a soup kitchen, clean up a neighborhood park, be a mentor. Not every day is going to offer us a chance to save somebody's life, but every day offers us an opportunity to affect one. So get in the game. Save the shoes. Thank you.
All right. Pretty cool.
Back in New
So-
York, I am the head of development.
So a little bit about today's presentation. Why are you here? You're here because you want to make a difference in your community. That's what we all want to do. And as Mark just demonstrated, sometimes that's just on the individual level. But we have a much bigger responsibility as fire marshals and community risk managers. We have to make that difference on the bigger scale. And today I'm just going to give you a little insight on how to do that, because we're going to talk about the future of community risk reduction. So if you're not tracking statistics, now's the time to get in the game, and we're going to talk about that. But how are you making a difference in your community? And it doesn't have to be just your community. It can be your entire organization. It can be your county. We have to look at a little bit different lens and broaden the picture, because we're not going to be able to do this all alone. So I'm going to give you some ideas on how to expand your resources, where to reach out for some other resources, and finally I'm going to close with a challenge for each of you to take home. So let's talk about community risk. Where was the first fire department ever developed? People identified the fact that they were losing things that they had worked so hard for. Ben Franklin developed the first fire brigade in the 1700s. And he rallied a bunch of individuals because they identified a problem. Their structures were burning down and they didn't have a way to stop it. So he created the first fire brigade. Are we really doing anything different now? We're looking at our communities, we're identifying a problem, and we're trying to solve that problem. Sometimes we can do that by ourselves. Sometimes we can do that within our organization. Sometimes we need to reach out to our community to look at the bigger picture, to solve a bigger problem. So as risk managers, as fire marshals, are we really any different than Ben Franklin when he started that first volunteer company? And many of you in this audience, I know, have started as volunteers as well. In fact, we all know that most of the country is protected by volunteers, and they're facing even harder challenges to this day. So let's take a look about what we can do as community risk managers to change the face of our communities and make a difference to those individuals in their lives. Some of you may use this model. This is something that we use at our fire department, but we talk about the E's of community risk reduction. We look at the environment, we look at statistics, we look at engineering controls. All of these little facets of community risk reduction make a difference. So what are you doing in your community? Do you follow this model? This is just one of many different ways of looking at community risk reduction. But everything that we do can make a small difference in helping those individuals. Where are your biggest target hazards? Are you studying those structures? Are you doing pre-plans? Are you looking at your age populations? You know, I'm not going to say that Kansas is any further along than many other states. So we're going to start off by looking at just the basics. Let's look at some of the statistics, and I think you'll see that we're not very different. This is the most recent data we have from the Office of the State Fire Marshal's Office from Kansas. Okay, we haven't even had the 2023 report yet, but 2022, it was just like anything other. Most of us call ourselves fire departments. How many of us are running more fires than we are medical calls? Yeah, that's what I thought. We're in the business of helping people, but most of the runs that we have are medical related. And then we look at those fire calls, we can break them down. Not much has really changed. Smoking and unattended cooking fires are still the biggest dangers. And that is true in even my organization. If I were to pull up the statistics right now for the Overland Park Fire Department, they would almost mirror these exact same statistics. So in you and your community, are you facing anything different? Probably not. We have some emerging technologies and we need to be prepared for those, but really, fire prevention has pretty much stayed the same. But we're losing more individuals to other risk factors, and that's where we need to broaden our lens and look at some of the other risks that are facing our community. So let's talk a little bit about those. This right here is Deanna Rose Farmstead. It is the second largest attraction in the state of Kansas, and it's in my hometown of Overland Park. It draws more visitors than most attractions throughout the state. And it is a huge economic risk for my community. Well, just to give you an example, we draw in more revenue from this site based upon feed for the goats and for the animals that the children get to pet than any other source of revenue in the city. In fact, it's the only division that really makes money. But we've had our challenges protecting this structure, because if we were to lose Deanna Rose, we would have a huge economic downturn to what makes Overland Park a great place to live. First, we had the avian flu. That started to kill off many of the animals, and that virus was spread. So we had to shut down many of the attractions, and that really hurt the economic income for the farmstead. Then we had the pandemic. Nobody wanted to be outside. It was a huge risk. We knew if we lost the Deanna Rose Farmstead, then we would have to work on other ways to draw in commerce and support our tax revenue. So looking at what your risks are in your community is incredibly important. Sure, we look at target hazards like nursing homes and schools. You look at the infrastructure, but what else is in your community that would really have a significant impact if it were to suddenly go away? So fortunately for us, this is right across from one of our fire stations, and we have made sure that it has many different security measures in place to protect this economic cash cow. One of the things that we also embrace in Overland Park is education. So many years ago, Battalion Chief Jim McGee had a vision of reaching out to children with disabilities to make sure they had an opportunity to experience the fire department and see those fire trucks just like all the other kids. Now, it just so happens that I do have a special needs child, and this was long before this was part of my family. But here's just a little clip to tell you a little bit about this program and why it is so effective and why it's so important to us at the Overland Park Fire Department.
Having something like this where there's not a lot of long lines, there's not super loud sirens going off. There's been enough staff and personnel here that
department brought out all of their equipment, and their new dog Haven is out here making everybody smile. So it's been a lot of fun. It's important that we let families that have children with special needs know that we're here for them, and it's a good chance for us to establish a relationship with them in a fun environment. We don't want to show up and make a situation worse. You know, when they call for help, they're getting somebody that they may not have ever encountered before, and if they can see us in our gear doing the demonstrations, or arriving in the fire truck, just gives them some context and maybe put them at ease. It also gives us a chance to speak with their parents and see what kinds of different techniques we can employ. We pre-plan buildings for fires. This is pre-planning, our medical responses.
Definitely one of the coolest things we can do all year with our children. So we can't thank you guys enough for putting it on.
Just want to thank everybody for putting this event on. I think it's been great for all the families being able to do this for all the kids. I think it means the world, and great event to have, and look forward to doing it again in the future.
Thank you, family, for having a good service here. Thanks for all that you do for Johnson County.
So as you can tell, this is a huge event for lots of kids, and that's my neighbor, by the way, there. Aiden comes every year. It's been going on since 2011. This isn't something that's an easy task, and Pat Sasoff, who you saw in the video, and myself spearhead this event every year. And I'm proud to say that it started in 2011, and we'll be having our next event on October 14th of this year to meet all those individuals. But this event couldn't happen without the support of all the resources in the county. Although we host this event at the Overland Park Fire Department, we have all the other fire departments in the county pitch in to help give those truck rides, to put on the static displays, the shooting the water hose. They backfill our stations. It is a huge event that requires lots of resources, and we couldn't do it without our partners in the community. So all the fire departments in Johnson County participate in this event. And that's the way you need to look at community risk assessment. You need to look at mitigating those problems by reaching out to all of your partners. We thought we were doing pretty good, but I also want to spend some time talking about some of the things that we're very weak at. There were two significant events that really changed the face of our department. The first one was City Place in 2017. This fire was a building under construction. It was a 4-story apartment complex surrounded with commercial structures, and it was in the building phase. It was in several stages. There were 5 structures that were currently under construction, 2 of which were completed. They also had some parking decks, parking garages that were located at the base of these structures, and also some parking ports that were included in between the structures. Well, a welder was doing some hot work without supervision and without a fire extinguishing source. Unfortunately, on this Kansas day, the wind got a hold of some embers. He left it unattended, and it took off, and this fire exploded, and because of the winds, it ended up capturing 22 houses on fire just to the south of this structure. It was the single largest fire event in the last century in Kansas City. This required a response from 12 different departments. It essentially went to 12 alarms. 22 houses were involved, and the estimates now are about $30 million in loss. This was the single biggest economic loss to the community that we had. And we had all the measures in place. The hydrants were there. It was just poor supervision. But there was another significant event that happened on the very next day. This house you see right here is not even 4 blocks, maybe 2 blocks from my house. This is a special needs group home. This house caught on fire because one of the attendants discarded smoking materials on the outside of the house, and it caught the house on fire. There were 5 disabled adults living in this home. They were able to rescue every single one of them, and no one got hurt. This would have been the single greatest lives number of saved in a single fire in the community. But guess how much media attention this fire got? None, because it was the following day after that previous fire. If you notice the dates, they were 1 day apart. All the focus was drawn towards City Place, which had a much longer lasting economic effect on our community. But this could have been the single greatest event that we had lives lost in our community. Fortunately, all those individuals were saved. But we found out a lot about group homes and how they weren't protected. And because they were inspected by the state, we needed to make sure that we got involved in this process because we had no jurisdiction. Other things that we learned about the City Place event and the group home fire is that we weren't really good at embracing and getting out to that community. So part of you as fire marshals and risk managers, public information officers, is you really have to work on those communication avenues. We found out that we needed to have crisis management briefings on a regular basis. So we set up a media center to make sure that we were able to reach out to the media, but also protecting those individuals that are affected by the fire. Fortunately for us, there were only 3 casualties in the City Place fire, and there were no casualties in that group home fire. But all of these events had a great significant impact on our community and on our fire department. So 2017 was a big wake-up call that we needed to do more to reach out in our education and focus some of our efforts on some of those hazards. Environmental scanning. So if you're not looking at your resources and tracking your data and looking at your populations, then you're probably missing those opportunities. One of the things we do as an accredited organization is we look at trends within the population. We look at crime, we look at revenue, we look at the number of resources that are available to the community. We'll look at some of the demographics on which of those homes are turning into rental properties, because that also tells us some of that population is changing. So you need to be looking at some of those statistics, and I'm very pleased to say that we have a data analyst that has her only job is to help us track information. When we need the numbers, she finds them for us. Working with our GIS department, we can go back and prove some of the events that are happening. We can look at some of the events that we need to plan for, and we can look where we need to focus some of our resources. So this is just an example of one of the areas that we tracked, and we use that to help us identify where we have some of those specialized smoke detectors that need to be deployed into our community. Another thing you need to be looking at are statistics. So we used to say pretty much 80% of all of our calls are EMS, right? Who is planning for COVID? What happened to you guys in your departments when you had when you started looking at the statistics after COVID happened? 80-20, 85-15 were those statistics usually? What happened in 2020 when we looked at those numbers? People were staying at home. People were staying inside. We actually had an increase in fire calls because people were cooking at home and they were having more accidents. I'll bet you if you go back and you look at your statistics, they were the same. Nobody wanted to go outside. Nobody was falling. Nobody was having environmental emergencies because nobody was traveling. Car accidents went down. Medical emergencies actually went down. Fire calls went up. So you need to track where your trends are heading. None of us could have predicted the effects of COVID and what it had on our community, but we understand now what will happen the next time we have a pandemic. These are statistics from Overland Park from last year. We're kind of back to normal. Sure, we run more fire than we do EMS, but go back and look at your statistics. Try to find out where your next trend is going to be. Now, we have lots of different resources, and you have different resources in your community. So this is a wake-up call for you to reach out Maybe you don't have the resources to track all of those statistics, but there may be somebody in your community or organization around you that does track some of those things. This is just a small snippet of lots of organizations that you can reach out for as community risk managers to look for trends in your community. I'm pleased to say that we have a huge network of community risk managers and fire marshals in Johnson County that work together. And in fact, in Johnson County, we don't work in a silo. We have specialized rescue, we have hazardous materials teams, but that's pretty much, well, we also have a wildland team, but that's pretty much where we stop. We leave all the other rescue and specialty services to all the other departments in the county because we share resources. So there are several water rescue teams within the county, and they all work together. We have a trench rescue team that from two of our neighbors that share resources. We can't be good at everything, and you may not be good at mitigating all of the risks in your community, so you have to reach out. In Johnson County, we do a lot of networking so that we share the load, because you really can't be experts at everything. Although the community expects us to be, we work and cover each other's backs when it comes down to providing some of those resources. One of the avenues that we were just recently able to experience is because of that a significant fire that I talked about in that group home, the county reached out to us and say, hey, how do we put together some information for our residents on making those group homes safer? Sure, there were regulations that had to be followed, but they wanted to reach out to make sure that we were more approachable. And so I took this opportunity to meet some of those individuals, because I have a special needs or a disabled person living in my home as well. And we helped create this video for them that was just released last month.
Did you know that if a fire starts in your home, you may have as little as 2 minutes to escape? That's why it's crucial to learn the best fire safety tips from the leading experts, like our brave local firefighters right here in Overland Park. Fortunately, they agreed to a personal home visit to teach us all about fire safety.
What always to prepare for fires in your home?
I'm so glad you asked that question. First, we want to make sure that we have working smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors in the home. If you need a specialty alerting device, the fire department can help you obtain one. You want to make sure that you know 2 ways out of your home and that you practice your exit strategies. The fire department may be able to help you with 2-person carries and other ways to get out of your house. And when you go to bed, remember, close before you doze. Closing your door is the best way to ensure that it's going to keep you safe from that smoke. So when you take a nap or you go to bed, make sure that bedroom door is completely closed.
There should also be a fire extinguisher mounted in every home where we provide residential services. Training on how to safely operate it is offered through JCDS.
What should we do if our smoke detector goes off?
Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to check your door to make sure it's not hot. And if it's hot, don't try to go out that door. Then, if it's not hot, you can look outside to see what the problem is. You want to get outside as quickly as you can and make sure that you call 911 from outside the home. Don't try to grab any of your belongings. We can always try to go get them later. It's important that you stay low and move fast. And in the event that your clothes do catch on fire, remember 3 things. Stop, drop, and roll.
Okay. We burn.
You can prevent fires in the home by making sure that, first of all, your medical equipment isn't overloading any circuits. We don't want to use extension cords, and that you have surge protectors to protect them. Careless smoking and unattended cooking are some of the most common causes of fires. So we want to make sure that if we do smoke or use candles, that they're all extinguished completely before we go to bed. We want to make sure if anything's flammable, you keep it away from hot surfaces. Make sure that you clean all of your cooking surfaces, and you make sure that all appliances are in the off position when you're not using them.
We greatly appreciate receiving life-saving advice from true experts in fire safety. Thank you, Overland Park Fire Department. Now we can all be prepared in case of a fire.
Johnson County Developmental Supports reached out to us, and we were really pleased to be part of that video. They did a fantastic job. So I'm not going to give another big presentation on all the different resources that you guys can obtain to help build your community risk managers and your community risk reduction programs. There are plenty of resources online, and many of you are experts, more expert than I am, on reaching out to your community and building those successful programs. So the National Fire Academy is a great place to start, but here's just a few examples of some of those resources. Another part of community risk is looking at disasters. Another avenue that the Overland Park Fire Department has been able to reach out to is Children's Mercy Hospital, which has a much bigger population that we can reach. We're working together right now to prepare for, to develop a program for disaster preparedness. Not something we need to talk about, but everybody associates Kansas with tornadoes and Toto. So we're doing our due diligence to build a successful program on helping those individuals, especially medically fragile children in those populations, on building 72-hour kits and having emergency preparedness plans in case we do have a tornado or a significant storm or another pandemic. We also need to focus as community risk managers on managing the risk for our individuals. So we have a strong program here in Overland Park, and I'm sure you do too, but how many of you are looking at things like mental health? That would seem to be one of the niches over the last 10 years. Electrical vehicle fires and battery storage systems. That's a technology that we need to embrace, and we need to be prepared to extinguish those fires. Looking at some of the new NFPA guidelines for fire departments and the standards that are being created for our volunteers, for our own health, and for our fire trucks. Looking at engineering controls. How many of you have clean cabs and you're designing trucks that way, or building your stations with a cold, hot, and a warm zone as far as for cancer reduction? These are all different ways to look into the future to help make our community safe and to keep our people safe, because they are our most important asset. For those of you that are looking at the community and are looking at public education, I'm going to challenge you to look at the way you're reaching out to those individuals. I remember when I was in charge of the Explorer Post, I needed to look at a different way of reaching out to my kids, and that was through text messaging. That was quite a while ago. Now there's different media platforms, but for those of you that are still using newsletters, you need to look at other avenues to reach out to those community. Where do you guys look for your own resources to gather that news information? We have a significant responsibility to uphold safety and to be a reliable source and to protect the community. We have been entrusted with that by the previous generations in the fire service, and people will still look to us to be that person that has integrity, that they can trust to walk into their home on any given day to make things better. We need to make sure that we are able to reach out to them and hold ourselves accountable to make sure we have accurate information. There are many media outlets now, and that's one of the things that we have to make sure that we're stopping when they're giving out bad information on significant events. There's too many media resources now, so we have to make sure that we remain pillars for community risk reduction and fire safety. And the last thing is, you got to start with this process from the top down. You have to have good, strong leadership in community risk management. And that's why most of you are here today attending this conference. You're here because you want to make a difference, and you made a commitment when you signed into this profession. We just need to broaden that lens a little bit and look at some of the other things, just like Ben Franklin did when he started looking at some of the risks in his community. The leadership embraces and shows the example of how to be that community risk asset. This picture right here, that's our former Chief Brian Diener. That's also on the left, and that's also Chief Diener on the right at Special Needs Day, now called Friends of First Responder Day. He set the example by reaching out to the community, and he was the one to dress up in that costume for those kids. We all can make a difference in that individual basis. So be that person that makes a smile and makes a difference for that one person, because that's the only way we're going to change those statistics. For those of you that exchange challenge coins, I look forward to meeting you, some of you, in some of the breakout sessions, because I like to exchange challenge coins. This particular challenge coin was created by Brian Rettelsheimer. We had a firefighter that passed away in 2022. His name was Mark Mansfield. But we have all embraced the term never forget. And this challenge coin was created by his crew. And for those of us that knew Mark, he's still very close to our hearts. I want to make sure that we meet again and we have an opportunity to share stories. But here's my challenge to you guys. Many of us track statistics and we find that our call volumes are increasing. We can all make a difference by looking at those targets, looking at our community, and seeing where our risks are. Let's set a goal to reduce our call volume. Let's make a difference by having preventive measures to reduce those risks and make differences in our community so that we as a fire department are not running as many fires or medical calls. And that we can turn to those individuals in those stations and saying, we're making a difference because you're not as busy, because that prevention division or that risk management division is doing their job. Thank you for your time, and I'll be around after the session to answer any questions. I appreciate it.